you to find those captions. If you are signed into the desktop application, you can also go to settings and adjust any of your accessibility options for this meeting or for future meetings. And you can also change your name in Zoom to include your pronouns by opening the participant window and selecting more to the right of your name. Now that we're all set for the session, is there anything specific anyone was hoping to get out of today's session? You want to put that in the chat? If there's anything you were hoping to learn. All right, awesome. Thanks for that. Well, I hope we can deliver a learning experience for you and you'll get some stuff out of it. But if you have any questions, feel free at any time to just drop them in the chat. So first, we're going to talk about accessibility and what tools are available that sort of provide that inclusive experience for everyone. So we're going to start off by discussing what disability is, and then we're going to dig into accessibility. Next, we're going to discuss some of the common challenges with access to different materials. And then finally, we'll look at tools specifically inside of Microsoft, which sort of help us create those inclusive materials. So just a lot of different things. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm really excited. We're going to talk first about our own difficulties and sort of imagine if we had difficulties accessing materials and consider how that might work, right? So it might be a short-term event, or it could be something that you need to figure out for a long term. But if you had difficulties accessing materials or accessing things, just think about how that might be in a day-to-day situation. Just receiving emails from colleagues or things like that, right? An example of that is, last year, my mom had to have eye surgery. And when she had eye surgery, she was not able to see very well for a few weeks after her eye surgery. So during that time, she needed additional resources to sort of help her to be able to participate in work and just life in general, right? Once she was recovered and everything, she was back to normal for her, and that was great. But during that time, she needed that additional assistance. Another example might be something that you may have had happen, possibly having a broken limb or a surgery or something like that. And for a period of time, you may have needed additional assistance. So just think about how important inclusivity is in ensuring that we have equity. And that applies to the digital world as well. So let's dig into disability first. So one of the things that we sort of think about when we think about disability is we think about it in terms of those physical limitations that you can sort of readily see, right? You can tell that there's something else that's, kind of going on because you can see it. But there's actually a lot of disabilities that are invisible, things that are cognitive, sensory, or are combined with mental health challenges, and they can impact a really large and often unseen segment of the population. So those types of disabilities are considered invisible because they're not easy to identify just by looking at somebody. So those are the ones that we really need to think about in the digital world. But really everybody kind of needs that. Just a quick fact to think about it a little bit more. According to the World Health Organization, they estimate that approximately 1.3 billion people across the globe, which is about 16% of the population, currently experience some type of significant disability. And according to the CDC, almost everyone will at some point in their life either have a temporary or permanent type of disability. So we have to, sort of consider that when we're creating materials. So injuries, illnesses, and even pregnancy can result in those temporary limitations that we want to make sure that we're accommodating, and we're making sure that everybody feels included and has access. So moving into why accessibility is important, we really want to think about what that really looks like. What is an accessible product or service, right? At the highest level, it means that we're designing products and services for everyone in a way that's easy to be understood and used by all people, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. So that includes encouraging inclusive practices and removing barriers to provide equitable access for all users. Today, we're going to be talking about digital accessibility, which specifically refers to breaking down the barriers to access of digital materials and services. This includes anything accessed using a computer, such as emails, attachments, and websites. So why should this really matter, right? Like, why, aside from, some of the stats that we've shared and some of the other things, why is this important? Of course, the obvious answer is it's important because it allows everyone to participate in society, right? But also we need to consider when products and services are not accessible, it excludes those people from opportunities like employment, education, and social interactions. There's reasons for businesses to comply, which include benefits of the business, potential legal ramifications, and then, of course, just thinking about those moral obligations that we hold to create equitable and inclusive experiences for everyone. So on the business side, there's a huge market opportunity, right? There's a huge population that can be tapped into if we're trying to provide those types of products and services. But also, by making your business accessible, you demonstrate that you are inclusive and welcoming to all customers, regardless of their abilities. This can lead to really positive word of mouth and strong brand reputation. Studies have also shown that when employees see their company is committed to accessibility, it makes them feel proud to work there, and it improves employee morale and productivity. So that can really help your employees feel connected to the company and really help everyone feel like they're working in this great positive kind of environment. Some things to consider is just that, in the US alone, about a quarter of the population has some type of disability. And just again, thinking through some of those disabilities you may not readily see, there's some stats here for vision, hearing, and cognitive disabilities. That's kind of the percentages of the US population, right? And that comes from the CDC. As a note, the stats that I'm providing, we're putting those links into the chat so you can take a look at them if you'd like to explore further. So the second thing we want to consider is legal risks. Obviously, nobody wants to get in trouble with the law. So if products or services exclude people with disabilities, then we really need to think about, how we can make sure that we don't do that. There's a bunch of laws and regulations that prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities. Sorry, just drink real quick. So by making sure that your business is accessible and your materials are accessible, you can help avoid any of those lawsuits or fines or things like that. Some of the laws and regulations around that are the Title II and Title III of the ADA, which is the Americans Against Disabilities Act. And then that sort of states that all local governments and state governments and anybody who receives any kind of federal funding provides equitable opportunity for all services and programs that they offer to employees or to the public. Additionally, it covers discrimination, and that includes programs and services on the internet. Additionally, Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act includes web accessibility, which includes all of those electronic communications like email, videos, audio captions, those kinds of things. And so disregarding of those laws can really pose issues for a business. In the last several years, there's been a 12% increase in lawsuits around ADA. And then, in the last, few years, there's been over 10,000 digital accessibility lawsuits. They're just really thinking through that. Also, according to a study done by Utah State University, they did some research into websites and things like that to discover how accessible the internet was. And they found 96% of the websites that they studied had homepage failures that could make it difficult for people to access the materials. And then 90% of them also used inaccessible it was their websites were inaccessible to assistive technologies. So people were unable to use their assistive materials to access their websites. So the last reason we kind of want to talk about is moral reasons, right? If we imagine this world that doesn't have barriers, where everyone can sort of participate and thrive, that's the kind of world we want to strive to get to. So morally, having products that disenfranchise segments of society feels less and less acceptable as, we're kind of in this new age of really trying to be inclusive, right? And accessibility aligns with those broader diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to help break down those walls and demonstrate that, we value all people and meet their needs. So each of us individually sort of has that moral duty to help colleagues and, just society in general to overcome any impairments or things like that that might impact the way that they're able to work. It's not just about technical specifications, it's about creating that society where everybody feels included and valued. One of the things that us at Knack Training really believe in is JEDI, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And that really just encompasses all of this potential for transforming accessibility, for transforming the way that we do business and the way that we have those nice environments for everybody to work in, right? So by embracing this kind of approach, we can make sure that everybody feels respected and valued in the work that they're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about assistive technologies. So assistive technologies are technologies that empower individuals with disabilities to reach their full potential. As an example, let's just sort of talk about assistive applications for physical disabilities, because those are kind of commonplace. People understand what those are. So things like wheelchair or crutches, right? Those things help people to be able to do different activities. There's assistive technologies that also do the same thing. So tools similar to crutches, right, are created for people who maybe can't see as well. And so they have assistive technology to do speech to text or text to speech, right? So it reads off the content that's being displayed, those kinds of things, right? So it really amplifies the capabilities and enables their participation in the digital world. Just a side note, fun fact, Did you know that text messaging was originally created as an accessibility feature? That was something that they created to help people to be able to communicate who couldn't necessarily communicate using traditional calls and things like that, right? So they created text messaging, and now today, you know, there's a lot of people who almost exclusively use text and chat to talk to people, family members, and things like that. And that was originally just created as an accessibility feature. So thinking about that and thinking about, you know, how some materials in our lives may have been created for those purposes, and we really rely on them heavily now. Um, it's just important to think about how we should not just consider disabilities, but really think about creating inclusive materials that benefit everyone, like text messaging, right? So there's other ones too, things like hearing aids and screen magnifiers that can enhance the way that people perceive the world. Other cognitive aids such as software programs and calendars, they sort of help people with organization and memory. And then more recently, AI, with all of the super fun advances in that realm of things, right, has been really pushing the barriers of what accessibility is able to offer, and how we can assist people to live more fully in their lives. So there's a lot of challenges that people face, and it's just important that we kind of touch on those challenges really quick, just to give you a better understanding of where, you know, people might be, and what they might be thinking, right? So users may face a variety of those challenges as they try to communicate with colleagues or participate in discussions. Some of those might be issues with chat features or audio cues, visual context, or the design of the content itself, right? So those difficulties may be due to color hues, which convey specific meanings that not all users are able to see or decipher. It might be due to uh, competing images or text on the screen or within the document that really kind of overwhelms them and makes it difficult for them to understand what's really going on. It could be multiple conversations or audio cues or noises that are going on during a meeting, and those can really be distracting. And they can have a really significant impact on how people receive and interpret that information, which can make it, you know, obviously difficult for them to participate fully and communicate with others. So it can lead to social isolation, unemployment, difficulties with employment, and other problems as well, right? So with a lot of forethought and really thinking about how we can design things, we can sidestep some of these barriers through inclusive design. So we'll take a just quick little look at a couple of tools that are out there that we can use to help us create materials. We'll kind of dive deeper into a couple of these things. So first of all, there's color contrast checkers. There's a bunch of them on the web. They're everywhere. They sort of check the difference between the color of a text and the color of the background that's behind it. Adobe Acrobat also has an accessibility checker that's built in. It's a really great way to check your PDFs to make sure that they are accessible and that they're meeting all the specifications that they need to. And then finally today, we're going to spend most of our time in the Office 365 suite to really look at that Microsoft 365 environment, which, you know, they have some accessibility check features and some other kind of things that are really great for creating accessible documents, emails, and presentations, which is what we're going to cover today. So with a few little awareness shifts and some of these really great tools that are out there, we can make a lot of meaningful strides in accessibility and inclusion. So the power of inclusive materials is really important because it helps us to imagine this world where information is freely accessible and everybody can access it regardless of their abilities, right? And so today we're going to dive into some of the principles that make that possible. The first one involves adding additional information for visual items, but which may not be visible to everybody. So we're talking about images and graphics and things like that. Some people may not understand the context. They may not understand what's going on. And so we're going to explore some ways that we can format those things to really make it easier for people to understand what's going on. We'll also talk about some ways that we can format documents and design presentations to make them more inclusive. And then we'll also talk about ways that we can ensure that those with language or cognitive difficulties can better navigate your content. So by incorporating those types of principles, you can create those inclusive materials that, you know, empower everybody to understand and participate. So accessibility isn't just about those technical specifications. It's about creating that really nice inclusive world where everybody has the opportunity to learn and grow and participate. And so let's explore further. Before we dive into some of those things and get a little bit more hands-on, which will be really fun, we are going to pause here for a second, see if anybody has any questions or comments, anything they'd like to bring up. Okay, looks like everybody's good, so we'll just move on. We really hope that you're enjoying the content today so far. We'd really love to work with you and solve all your training and Microsoft challenges that you might be encountering. So please, if you would like to work with us, reach out to delete@knacktraining.com to schedule a time for us to help your business be successful. So if we can think about how we use chat in sort of this online community, right? We have this really vibrant area that's got lots of conversations going on, lots of different things. And we can fully participate in those chats and those communications. But for, you know, some people, chat remains inaccessible. It's a barrier that sort of excludes them. And so for those who are deaf or hard of hearing, that can sort of feel a little bit like a silent movie if there's a lot of, you know, dings coming in and noises and things like that, like they aren't picking up on those things. So transcripts become subtitles for them, and it allows them to really participate fully and contribute their perspectives to the conversation. If somebody has a visual impairment, it can turn chat interfaces into sort of confusing mazes. They may not be able to see or comprehend what's going on fully. So using the clear formatting and using alternative text descriptions for images can really help ensure that everyone can navigate and understand the conversation. Sometimes as quickly as chats are coming in and going out and things like that, you know, everybody's just really excited and going. That can be really overwhelming for some people. And so if we can just think about when we're chatting, giving people a little time to respond, making sure that we avoid jargon and provide clear context, it can really help people comprehend those messages a little bit easier, and they can participate more meaningfully. Some people may have physical disabilities that make typing or clicking challenging for them. And so there's alternative input methods out there, such as voice commands and assistive technologies, which can empower them to join the conversation and express themselves. So technology alone by itself is just not enough. There are a lot of resources out there, but it's really important to also train the team, right? Anybody who's moderating chats, anybody who's running meetings and videos and things like that, to understand the accessibility features that are out there, to understand how to communicate those to people, and to create that, you know, welcoming environment where everybody feels like they can participate. So we're going to talk just a little bit about Microsoft Teams, maybe a little more than just a little. I like Teams a lot. So, so we'll talk a little bit about Teams. Teams has a lot of great built-in features that can really help users navigate content, videos, and chat. These features include the ability to change settings for high contrast options, adjust video frames in meetings, and do text-to-speech options for input. So just really briefly, we're going to jump into Teams. And there we go. Teams. And I'm going to show you a few features inside of Teams. So, whoops. Not what I meant to do. Sorry about that. Pull Teams back up. That's where I want to be. So inside of Teams, first of all, I would like to preface this by saying I am using the new Teams. I am not using the classic Teams. So my Teams may look just slightly different from a Teams that you are more familiar with. So first of all, we're going to go to the ellipses in the top corner, which is the 3 little dots. Those are called ellipses, right? And so that's usually where you can find more options or settings inside of Teams, really inside of a lot of Microsoft products, but specifically Teams. We're going to go to the settings. So in the new Teams, there are additional options for accessibility, which are really great. So you can obviously change a lot of different information over here, but we are going to go to appearance and accessibility. And you can see here that we can choose to have a different theme, which includes a high contrast theme, which may be something that somebody with low vision might need to help them navigate Teams better. There's also different options for your density, for sign language view. If you have a colleague or something like that that needs sign language, they can actually manage their sign language translators, and so that those people show up all the time. So that can make it easier for them. If animations are a little overwhelming, you can turn those off. You can also change your language and turn on TTY mode. So those are some of the options that you have inside of there. There's also, if you scroll down just a little bit further in the menu, there's also captions and transcripts. So you have the option inside of here to turn on transcripts and captions. So you can filter those, and then you can also turn it on to always show live captions in meetings. If you do that, it's going to ask you what language every time that you do. And so that's just kind of one of those options that they have available, but you can turn that on or off during specific meetings, or you can turn it on all the time. So while we're in here, I'm just going to quickly show you one of the features that are in your Teams chats. If you go to a chat and you kind of scroll over a chat, you'll see the more options with all of your fun emojis, but you also have more options in here. You can share and this kinds of things, but if you go to more options down here, there is an option for an immersive reader. That immersive reader will read the chats to you, so you can get an idea of what's going on, and you can just kind of listen to it if you have low vision or any other reason that you would want to listen to it. As a note, the immersive reader will start from the beginning of the conversation unless you select specific text that you want it to read. So those are some of the just basic kind of settings in there. Unfortunately, we are in a Zoom meeting right now, and Teams and Zoom are not super friendly with each other. And so I cannot show you a lot of features that are inside of Teams meetings while I'm in this Zoom meeting. So I want to show you some screenshots, and hopefully that'll make sense to you. So there's some different options that Teams has for inclusivity and making sure that people are able to participate fully. So first we have the option to turn on live captions. So that option is available in the ellipses, the bar that's usually at the top of your screen when you're in a Teams meeting will have options on it, and one of those is the three little dots. And if you click that, then you can go down to captioning, and you can choose your caption language and your spoken language. So one note is that translation is available only in the premium subscription of Teams. So I have that option available to me, but not everybody will. Just depends on your subscription status that you have. And then another thing to note is that captions do not save after the meeting. Transcripts do, but captions do not. So just as they are helpful during the meeting. Also in Teams, you have the option to change the way that you view things. So you can choose the view button in the top menu, but you can also change how the video is shown. So you can choose to pin a specific video. So that can be really imperative for users who need translation services. And then you can choose how you want the video framed, which allows for users to see more of a participant's video. As I kind of stated before, you have the option to transcribe a meeting and record room meetings for review. So those options are also in the three ellipses more area. And so you can record and transcribe. Some companies may have these options turned off just depending on their policies. One thing we don't really think of as an accessibility feature, we kind of think of it more as like a fun kind of thing, is being able to blur or change your video backgrounds, right? But that is an accessibility feature. It allows users who may have sensitive information or may not want to showcase that they're sitting in a wheelchair or something along those lines, so they can feel secure in putting themselves out there and turning their videos on. They can also preview that feature prior to starting the meeting, and then they can change their audio sources. So if they have alternative hearing devices or something like that, they can change those audio devices. So we kind of briefly touched on the immersive reader inside of Teams. So you can see a screenshot here on the right side that shows the immersive reader option inside of chat. It looks just a little different because this screenshot's actually not from the new Teams. It's from the classic Teams. But it looks, it's still in that same ellipses area. And then you'll also see an image to the left of what it looks like inside of Microsoft Word. So we're actually going to jump into Microsoft Word. I'm going to show you some features in Microsoft Word. So here is my nice little Word document that was a sample for us to kind of run through a couple of things for accessibility. So first of all, we have our immersive reader, which will let us go ahead and do that and do the immersive reading for us, right? But we also have this. So if we go to the File tab, and then we come all the way down to the bottom where it says Options, you have some options in here. This kind of shows you, a bunch of different options that you have for using Microsoft Word, but you can scroll down to where it says accessibility. And in the accessibility options, you have the option to turn on the accessibility checker while you're working. I will show you where that is as well. And then you can show shortcuts and screen tips and generate alternative text. So there are some options in here as well that can kind of help you to create better and more accessible documents for other people. So when we look at this document, you can see that I have this all up. And if I go to review, the review ribbon, there is a button here for check accessibility. If I click check accessibility, it will give me a few options down here. I'm just going to click check accessibility, and it's going to open this up and give me a screen tip. It also gives me more information. Microsoft is really great about this. You can click this link and it will take you to Microsoft, where they will show you some more information about making documents accessible, some of the accessibility features inside of Microsoft that can be really helpful for you. But you'll also see up here that it gives me some errors. So I have some objects in here that are missing a description. It also tells me that I have images that are not in line. And then it gives me some warnings that I may have some hard to read text contrast. So it shows me here that this welcome is not accessible. And so it gives me recommended actions for changing either the page color or the font color. So I can change the font color, and now it's darker and a little easier to read. I can also go up here to the Home tab, and I can change my color here. You'll notice when you look at your colors that it does actually give you a high contrast only option. So you can turn that on and it will show you the colors. I think my Word is not loading right because it should show me the dark colors. I am not sure why it's not loading. Okay, that's a weird, fun thing. I wonder if I have an update. I thought I just updated yesterday. But when you turn this on, it should show the dark colors. It's not even letting me click any of that. So it's definitely an error, but it would just show me like these darker colors in here because these are high contrast colors. And it would just give me those options if I turn that on. That's what it's supposed to be doing right now, but is not. But that is a new feature that Microsoft has added just recently for accessibility purposes. So I can, of course, come in here and change this color. You can see that this is not a very good contrast for the background, so I can change that color as well. It tells me this is a little low contrast as well, so I can go ahead and change that, and you'll see that it goes away when I do that. Then if I click on my images, so here's a graphic. This is a background graphic. It is not providing any contextual information. You don't need to know that this is here to understand the contents of this document. And so I can mark this as decorative so that it will, if a screen reader is reading the text on this page, it will ignore this image because it's not important to the content of the page. If I come down here, it's going to tell me that this picture also needs a description. So I can click add a description, and it will bring me to the alt text box. And that alt text box will allow me to put text in here to describe what this picture is. I also have the option of generating alternative text. So it will automatically generate this text for me, and I can decide if this text accurately represents what's going on in this image, and I can change it or edit it or whatever I need to do. And so those are kind of the options in there. You can see down here, because I turned on check my documents in the options settings, it will tell me to investigate accessibility down here. So it'll tell me that I have some issues still. And so it'll tell me to fix those issues. I'm not sure why it's telling me to fix a space. And then it's telling me to review the auto-generated description so I can approve this. And then it'll stop telling me that. So one other thing to consider is that when we're talking about font, this is not something that's very easy to read. And so we want to make sure that our font is something that is easy to read. In general, the idea for fonts is that they should be, your font size should be at least 12 points, and that your font type should be a sans serif font. So a sans serif font is a font that does not have the little tick marks on them. So I will show you a, so this, and I'll just up that so you can see it a little better, has those little tick marks at the end. Not a great example. Times New Roman has those little tick marks right there at the very end. Those are called serifs. Studies have shown that sans serif fonts, so fonts that don't have those little tick marks, fonts like Arial, are easier for people to read. So just thinking through like what font is going to be easiest for people to read when you're writing, especially large blocks of text, right? So again, you can see over here in the accessibility, it says keep the accessibility checker running while I work. If I turn that off, you'll see that the accessibility thing down here goes away. And then there's different information. Microsoft is really great about providing this additional information for people on how to fix things and to read more about how to make sure your documents are accessible. So if we're talking a little bit about designing for inclusivity, we talked a little bit when we were looking at that document, right? But it really should be an essential part of the design process from the very beginning of your creation. And so it's really imperative to consider that colors are appropriate and the images are contextual, fonts are clean and easy to read, and that content is easy to navigate. When we're talking about alt text, we talked about that a little bit already, right? And so alt text is text that replaces images, graphics, or charts within a document or a presentation or whatever. And so we want to make sure that it's really relevant. It's a brief description of an image or other non-text content that's used by those screen readers to provide that information to a user. And so when you're putting that alt text in there, make sure that it's contextual and that it makes sense for like a screen reader to read back to a person if they were going to be listening to the document. So color contrast is really important. We talked about that a little bit before. As a reminder, color contrast is the difference between the background and the foreground color, or the difference between the background and your text color. So my preferred color contrast checker is the WCAG contrast checker. When you run it through, it gives you these results like this. So it will tell you small, large, or UI stands for user interface components. And so that would be like buttons and graphics and things like that. And so that tells you whether or not this passes those standards. One thing to really think about when you are designing is not to only use color as a way to emphasize a point. As you'll notice here, I used color, but I also bolded the word only to make sure that if you're unable to pick up on that hue difference, that you would see that it's bolded so you can see a difference between it and the regular text as well. And so using multiple methods is good. You can still definitely use color. I've had people before who are like, oh, you said don't use color. No, don't only use color, right? Use other methods as well. And then another thing to think about as well is that Microsoft offers high contrast options for all of their applications. So as I was showing you in Teams, you can turn that high contrast option. You can do that with other things as well if for some reason you have low vision. So checking accessibility, we kind of went over that a little bit inside of Microsoft Word. We're going to jump really quick into PowerPoint just to show you this. And so kind of looking at this document as well. Inside of PowerPoint, we have this accessibility investigate button, which I can click and it will tell me that I have these issues. I can check the reading order as well. So the reading order is really important for documents like this and PDFs. It is the order in which a screen reader will read the content to a user. And so something you really want to think about is if I go to verify reading order and I look at this, it's going to tell me, let's look at slide 2. That this item down here, this number 2, is the very first thing that's going to be read. It is selected here on the side. If I unselect it, that means that that will not be read by a screen reader. It is then going to read this text box before it reads the title. After it reads the text box, it's going to read the title. And then it's going to read this footer here. And then it's going to go to the picture and then the star. This is not the way that you would read this. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at the reading order, that everything is in the way that you would want it to be read, right? We want the title to be read before the text is read. Is this picture contextual? Does it matter? In what order does it matter that people get that information? And so just think through your reading order. It's a really important part of accessibility. And think about how confusing it would be if I started reading these links before I started reading the title and told you what this was. So again, this is an example where I have a picture and I have a graphic. This graphic I would want to be taken out of this. There's some other graphics in here, right, that I would want to mark as decorative because they're not important. Something else that this document has that the other document did not is a link. So something we want to think about when we're talking about links is the screen reader will read this text. It will not read the link behind the text. It will just read the text. So what we want to do when we create links is we want to make sure that those hyperlinks are meaningful text. And so saying accessibility tools for Microsoft 365, Microsoft support page is better than saying HTTPS, blah, 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 right? This is what the screen reader will read. And this isn't going to make sense to somebody if they're listening to it. Honestly, it doesn't make sense to me reading it either. So we really want to use meaningful text for our hyperlinks. And we can do that by clicking edit link. And then up here it says text to display. And so we can go in there and we can say, here's the text that I want it to say, but it'll still leave that link in there, right? And we can click OK. And so now it says Microsoft support, and now that is accessible. We just want to make sure that we're really thinking through some of those things. An alternative option is to doing review and check accessibility is to go over here to File and go to Info and go to Check for Issues and then Check Accessibility. You'll notice in PowerPoint, um, so you'll notice in PowerPoint that there's an additional ribbon up here. This is a contextual ribbon. This ribbon appears because I'm doing accessibility. Sorry. And it gives you now all of these options. This is something else that's a little bit new in PowerPoint. And so it gives you all of these options to change things. It gives you subtitle options. It gives you the reading order pane options. It gives you alt text, the ability to mark something as decorative, those kinds of things, right? Also, you'll notice here that it gives you the option to inspect without color. That's important if you're trying to maintain a high contrast document. And so you want to click that, and then you'll see this is what it looks like if there's no color. So if I was colorblind, this is what it's going to look like. Can I read this text? Not really. So I probably want to increase the contrast on that text. And so this is a really good way to make sure that you're kind of following those design principles as you're creating content. I did notice, Christopher, you had a couple of questions. I am not sure if the font choices had any influence in Microsoft changing their default font. I do not know the answer to that question. But if you save a file as a PDF, the reading order should flow from the Microsoft file. So it comes through into PDF. And then you'll see the same thing inside of, like if you use Acrobat, the reading order will transition over there. So some of our other considerations that we want to think about, right, are thinking about audio things or nonverbal sounds that can be really difficult for people with disabilities to hear. Some people may find them distracting. We kind of talked about that a little bit already, right? And so we just want to make sure that we provide transcripts and we use the clear language and provide a quiet environment where audio cues are limited and easy to hear. Thinking about that content, again, content that has too much link or too many elements can be really difficult for users to distinguish the message or focus on the identified content. So again, using clear, concise language, using contextual images, and then separating content into blocks with headings and ensuring clear message will help users. And then again, that hyperlink text, you really want to think about that as well. So another consideration, of course, is our language. We want to consider that that's accessible and inclusive. It's really essential for creating those environments. It's just, you know, good practice, right? So avoid using any language that might be discriminatory or offensive. Use gender neutral languages, avoid stereotypes and assumptions, things like that. And then really consider the audience of your presentation or your materials. Where is it going? Who is it going to? If your content is targeting like a global audience, consider localizing it for different languages and cultures. Make sure that the colors that you're using, the content that you're using, images that you're using are culturally relevant and appropriate, right? And so it may involve things like translating the content or adapting it to local cultural norms and using appropriate idioms and expressions as well. Before we wrap up today's session, we're going to take a quick look at emails. It's often the most overlooked portion of accessibility. It's important to consider that anyone who receives an email for you may have a hidden disability and need accessible content. A few key tips prior to sending emails is to make sure you check any documents that you're sending out to make sure that they're accessible and ensure that you're using those appropriate fonts and sizes within your emails. Again, the preferred is 12 point and sans serif fonts. If you're using tables or images, make sure that they're simple tables and that you're using alternative text. And then we're just going to jump into Outlook really quick so I could show you just a couple of things. So here is my Outlook. I am using the new Outlook, so it may look a little bit different if you're using the classic version of Outlook. Again, we have the option to go into our settings. And when we're in our settings, we have some different options in here. If we go to General tab, we can come down here. There's appearance. Again, you can change, all kinds of things if you need higher contrast and those kinds of things. And then you can go to accessibility. So in accessibility tab, it lets you use different keyboard shortcuts depending on what you are most comfortable with. And then it also gives you the option to ask senders to send content that's accessible. And so you can make sure that others know that you would like accessible content. The way that that looks, as a note, it will show up when other people are emailing you. You'll see up here, it says that if I email Neil, Neil prefers accessible content. And then it will give me the option to check for accessibility issues. Since I don't really have anything in my document, of course, it's going to tell me no issues are found. I can check again. Inside of Outlook, your accessibility options are under options. And then there's the check accessibility button. I'm not inside of here, so it won't let me. So you have to be selected on your email for that to happen. Something else to sort of consider, as we talked about before, we have options to, where did my, okay, I can't show you. I was going to show you Copilot and how AI can really help us create inclusive content, but maybe I just need to restart. Maybe all my programs have an update. I don't know. It was there a second ago and now it's gone. So I guess you won't do that. But Copilot can really help you if you have Copilot enabled within your organization or your teams. And Outlook and things like that. That is the direction that things are going, right? Is that these AI tools can really help us in creating inclusive content and in making inclusive things, right? So any additional questions or anything before we close? So thank you so much for joining us today. It really hopefully will help empower your business and yourself to create those inclusive materials. And I hope you've learned something. Just a couple of thoughts to close out the session. Maybe. There you go. First, use tools. They're a great resource to help make your life easier. Microsoft has a robust array of tools that are consistently being improved upon. Use them. Second, don't get too overwhelmed thinking all documents and presentations you own need edited or recreated. Take it one step at a time. Look at the materials that you're sharing with other people first. And then lastly, give yourself time and grace. It's an ongoing process, so think about it as iterative. Hopefully today's session is giving you some things to think about as you create materials that you can easily implement in the process. Use those simple things to make improvements. Remember, we're all just trying to get to a place that's inclusive, and the only way to do that is one step at a time, just starting today. Thank you so much.